Hello, and welcome to Unco, a podcast about what's unusual in tech. I'm your host, Timothy Buck. In case you missed it, last week's show was a lovely conversation with Marco Suarez, design systems head at InVision and former designer for Etsy and MailChimp. We discussed remote work and why he decided to make that a priority in his career. And then we dove into the intriguing topic of design systems, what they are, how they work, and key ways they improve product teams. This week's show will be a solo episode, and I'm going to talk about a few things that are unusual in tech right now. More specifically, small features that delight. The first small feature that brings delight to me is in the newest version of Overcast. Overcast is a podcasting software for iOS that I've used for years now. It's made by a developer called Marco Arment, and in Overcast version 4.1, he released this new feature that he calls Smart Resume. Sounds like a small thing. It is a small thing. It's not the primary purpose of the app, but as someone who commutes a lot, this is a huge win for me. What Smart Resume does is actually two separate things, and I've looked at Marco's blog post for this to make sure that I can explain it right, but it does two different things. First, it jumps back a couple seconds after you've paused to help remind you what you've missed. So if say you're driving like I do and you have directions on and the podcast pauses, it tells you to turn and you're focusing on where you need to go, and then it begins playing again, it'll jump back just a handful of seconds so that you remember what was going on in the conversation of the podcast. And it also, slightly differently than that, it makes sure to skip back to a time that was silence between words so that when it begins playing again, it's not playing partway through a word, but instead will always start playing right before a word starts, and then you can catch back up with where you're going. Again, this is a small thing. It's a small feature, but it's something that for me has been really delightful over the past week. I listen to podcasts a lot while I'm driving, and somebody will call or directions will be going or some other thing. For some other reason, I'll pause a podcast, and being able to hit play, just be reminded by a handful of seconds of what was going on in this conversation, in this podcast, and catch right back up automatically is amazing. So just want to shout out to Marco that this is a great feature. It's an amazing product. If you don't have Overcast, definitely check it out. I'll put it in the show notes. So the second small feature I want to talk about is actually from a really big company. It's from Audible. And Audible is owned by Amazon, but they've done something for as long as I've been using Audible, which is 6-7 years now. And this feature that they have has, it's a small thing, but it's brought a lot of delight to me as a customer, and it's made me a loyal customer. So for those of you who don't know, Audible is a digital audiobook company. You can buy basically any audiobook you can think of there, and I've subscribed to Audible for a very long time. And this small feature that they have is called the Great Listen Guarantee. I've only used it a handful of times, but I just used it this week, which is why I thought of it when I was preparing for the podcast. What the feature is if anytime in the last year you've purchased a book, an audiobook, and you didn't really like it that much, you can just go into your account on the website, click one button, and it'll return it. It'll return the audiobook, give you a full refund if you paid cash, if you use their token system, if you use some sort of discount code, whatever the way is that you purchased it, you will be refunded that thing. And you can use that again to purchase another book. And just this past week, I was looking through my Audible library, and there were a handful of books that I'd started and I got a couple hours into, and then I just stopped, and it had been probably 4 or 5 months, and I just never went back to them. And I knew, I thought that was going to be a good book, but I'm never going to finish this. So I went in, I returned those 2 books, ended up getting 2 other books that I've already finished one of them, and I'm about to start the second. And that little thing has made me a very happy customer. There's one more feature that delights that I want to share with you, and it's actually something that came with iOS 11 and macOS High Sierra, but it's something that I haven't really seen very many people talking about. And every time that I've shown it to somebody at our house, they've been blown away and thought, wow, this was a really smart idea. I don't know why nobody else has thought of it. This is a way to share your Wi-Fi password. So typical of Apple, this only works with people who have other Apple devices. If a friend of yours comes to your home, you have, say, an iPhone, as long as it has iOS 11, and your friend comes over and they have an iPhone or they have a Mac or whatever, and they want to connect to the Wi-Fi in your home. This is a very common thing. And all they have to do is go to your Wi-Fi network, and when they click to connect to your Wi-Fi, your phone will get a little message, a little notification, and it'll say your friend's name is trying to connect to Wi-Fi. Do you want to share your password? And you say yes. And it's going to automatically fill in the password on their computer or their iPhone and log them in to your Wi-Fi. You don't have to worry about making sure they spelled it right, giving them a sticky note, anything like that. They just automatically connect, and this feature works really, really well. There are a few caveats. Like I said before, they have to have an iOS device. You also have to have their contact information in your contacts on your phone or computer. And the reason that's true is you don't want everybody who, especially if you live in a city, everybody who tries to connect to your Wi-Fi to send you that notification. For me, this works really, really well. It's something that I've been really happy with, and I've been happy to share with other people. I'll link to all three of these in the show notes. And if there's any small features that you find delightful on your phone and any app on your computer, definitely share them with me. I'd love to hear about them. And actually, as I was finishing up my outline for this podcast, it made me think of a blog post that I'd read. I don't know, it seems like it was maybe a year ago or two. And it's on a similar topic. It was called Tiny Wins by Joel Khalifa. And I'll link that in the show notes as well. He goes through some little benefits that, little features that were added to GitHub, to Chrome, and to a handful of other tools that really, really benefited their users. And he talks about how these tiny wins are things that product teams should be focusing on. This is something that I want to make sure we're implementing on the projects that I work on. And it's something that I really want to see from more companies, big like Apple or Amazon, and small like independent developers like Marco. These relatively small things that these businesses have chosen to invest time and money into that really, really benefit their users. And that's all I had for this week. You can keep up with Unco by following @_UncoFM on Twitter. You can join the Unco community and support the show over at patreon.com/UncoFM. And of course, you can subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Overcast, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also stay up to date with my writing over at timothybuck.me or by following me on Twitter @timothybucksf. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen.